Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're going to love it.
Okay, let's go.
Man, I really want to get back into releasing an episode on Monday. I promise I'm going to try and do that. God, I should have released an interview yesterday. I have a couple edited and ready to go. All right, I'm going to try to get in that habit. Anyway, what's up, everybody? Hope you're doing well. I hope you had a nice weekend. Okay, let's see. What do I want to talk about today? Oh, the first thing I want to talk about is, man, yesterday, this is hilarious. I had 3 phone calls, 3 work-related calls, actually, and I walked around my house while I took those calls, and this is insane. At the end of all 3 calls, I had walked like 11,000 steps. So like my daily step count, I accomplished it literally taking the calls, walking around my house. Sometimes I'll go outside and I'll walk around outside. But yesterday, I basically just had the phone on speaker and kind of just held it to my mouth and pretty much just walked around the house. And yeah, that's pretty amazing. So get in the habit of doing that. If you are somebody who takes a significant amount of, lengthier phone calls, try and get some steps in while you do it. Seriously, it's a great way to multitask. Okay, that's that. I did want to say it finally happened. I figured this would happen sooner versus later, but Elon Musk has stepped away from politics and from the Trump organization. Now, there's a lot with this, and I'm not going to talk about it too much. I'm really just going to talk about a couple quick things. I do think there's been a little bit of tension between him and Trump. I think part of that is Trump is trying to put forth this gigantic omnibus spending bill, which honestly is exactly what he argued against for 4 years with the Biden administration. So I find it pretty hypocritical. I'll talk about it more because I'm actually going to try and get a copy of it and either read it or probably have ChatGPT read it and then pull out the big things that are in this. They're calling it the big, beautiful bill. That dude, man, he is a character. The big, beautiful bill. Like, why do you have to add the word beautiful into it? Oh my God, it's funny. Anyway, Elon, to his credit, he kind of criticized it and basically was not a fan. And then a few days later, he announced that he's stepping away from Doge. And obviously the way they positioned it is that, his tenure there was only temporary anyway, and the time was up. Now, here's the weirdest thing. So in the little press conference that they did in Trump's office, so Elon had a little black eye. He had a shiner. So obviously you could tell he had gotten hit in the eye. And there are rumors swirling around. Now, this first one I do not believe, but supposedly one of Trump's guys, Stephen Miller, I don't even know what this guy does, but supposedly Stephen Miller's wife and Elon might be having a little something, and they were saying it came from that. Now, if you see this Stephen Miller guy, I don't see him punching Elon in the face. So I don't think that's the case. At the press conference or at the thank conference in Trump's office, the reporter said, "What happened to your eye?" And basically Elon said, "I was just horsing around with Lil X and I said, go ahead and punch me in the face." And he did. Musk continued, "It turns out even a 5-year-old punching you in the face actually gives you a black eye." And then Trump interrupts and he goes, "That was X that did that?" And Elon says, "Yeah." Musk said, "Yeah," while giggling. Anyway, I don't know. I mean, he's saying that Lil X, remember Lil X, famous for wiping his boogies under Trump's desk? He says that Lil X gave it to him. I don't know. Now, here are the rumors that are swirling on the interwebs. The interwebs is saying, and if you are a believer in these secret societies and all of that stuff, which, by the way, I'm still have not gotten a chance to record that episode with Paul Davis, but I'm going to. But anyway, all of the people that do believe in, like, you know, the Illuminati, the Bilderberg Group, the Freemasons, all that stuff, which again, I don't know enough about that stuff to even give an opinion at this point. But they are saying that it is part of a humiliation ritual. And so the black eye was to signify his being dismissed from Doge, and basically that it is part of something else. Now, again, man, some of you might guess what I'm about to say, and that is anything is plausible. Who the hell knows? I really do have a hard time believing Lil X could make that big of a black eye. I mean, I've been hit in the face by my niece and nephew when they were that age, and, you know, maybe there's a little scratch, but I don't see getting a shiner. And I mean, there's a picture of it on the Deep Shallow Dive Instagram if you want to see what it looks like. I actually themed the post to X gonna give it to you. He gonna give it to you. What a perfect song. What a perfect song. The DMX track to Lil X supposedly punching Elon in his eye. X gonna give it to you. He gonna give it to you. X gonna give it to you. So anyway, if you want to see what it looks like, I mean, it's a nice black eye. It's not like if Mike Tyson punched you, but it definitely is a forceful punch to leave that big of a mark. So anyway, there's that. All right, let me see. I've got some things I want to play for you guys.
If President Trump is serious about recreating manufacturing jobs in the United States, he needs to do several things. And I offer this advice without charging him a penny.
So really quick, this is a Chinese diplomat or businessman. I couldn't figure out what his role was and whether he lives in China or lives in the United States. But give this a listen. He's kind of talking about, well, he's giving President Trump free advice about bringing manufacturing back to the United States. And obviously, I think he's going to talk about whether, you know, what Trump is trying to accomplish can be achieved through tariffs or not. But he makes a lot of excellent points. So give this a listen.
He needs to build up connectivity, build up container ports, build up high-speed railway, build up high-quality highway system, for example, build up inner river transportation. And he needs to increase power generation like crazy. He needs to at least double the power capacity in the United States to really achieve meaningful amount of manufacturing jobs back to the United States.
All right, let me jump in real quick. Man, that guy makes some excellent points. Like, there's a lot more to this Make America Great Again other than just, you know, tariffs and trying to you can't just bring manufacturing back to the United States without having a proper infrastructure for that. So all of the things this guy talked about, the most important, I think, is he needs to build up more energy. You know, we got rid of our nuclear energy, I think, years back. There's like a nuclear power plant down near San Diego that, quite frankly, was probably providing electricity for, you know, half of California and a huge chunk of Arizona and Nevada and all that. And I'm going to try and do a deep dive on that, because there's just no reason that they should have shut down that nuclear power plant. And nuclear power in general, it's the most efficient and effective form of power. I'm going to really look into that stuff. I want to understand that personally a lot better. But anyway, what this gentleman is talking about in terms of saying, hey, it's not just as simple as, raising tariffs in order to try and bring the price of goods down and put the onus on the exporters and, quite frankly, on the manufacturers, because again, remember, the companies that are exporting their products or their manufacturing that we then import are American companies. It's the Apples of the world that have gone over to China because of, first of all, the cheaper labor, but also the much more, I think, technical labor. So anyway, all those points that this guy made in the first part of that, where he talked about build up the port system, build up the railways, build up the inner country river system, or the transportation system of being able to get goods across the country. I mean, think about it. The United States rail system is pretty ridiculously bad. I mean, you've got Amtrak, but again, I think on a commercial basis and then obviously on a consumer basis, which again is literally pretty much just Amtrak, we're not a rail country, whereas pretty much all of Europe and all those Asian countries have incredible rail systems. I think we talked about that on one episode about the Japanese rail system. So anyway, I loved what that guy said about, hey, you've got to really build up your infrastructure if you want to bring all this manufacturing back to the United States, first of all. All right, let's listen.
He needs to train the American people. He needs to instill this discipline and work ethics, which will enable the great people in the United States to work in factories which need to be competitive, which need to have the marketability not only in the US market, but in the global market. You think tariff will really force manufacturing jobs back to the United States?
I thought that was so brilliant. That second part was just as good as the first part. I mean, he needs to train the American people, instill that work ethic. I mean, seriously, think about it. Think about the images you see of the Apple plants in China. Now, again, I'm not saying I'm against this plan. I'm actually a huge supporter of trying to bring manufacturing back to the United States. I think that absolutely is the long-term solution. But the challenge is it's not as simple as just, putting a bunch of tariffs on everything and thinking that's going to make that happen. It's not. Think about the workforce. Seriously, like when I see the images of the Chinese factories, and then in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, I could never see Americans or the American workforce, which by the way is, very diverse and obviously multicultural, but I don't know if I can see the American workforce having the work ethic to work as hard as needed and to work as disciplined as needed. Man, you look at some of those images and the discipline, especially in these Asian countries, I mean, it's insane. And we don't have that. We absolutely don't have that. And that's not going to happen overnight. I mean, that may take a few generations to get that. Seriously, that's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy. And then also, a lot of these skilled manufacturing jobs, especially for, the technology products like an iPhone and all that. I mean, think of how delicate that stuff is and how small that stuff is. That's why, I mean, I hate to say it, but a lot of those Asian countries are kind of tailor-made to do that stuff because they're just smaller human beings. They have smaller hands, they're just smaller people. And so more of them fit in less space and really, again, the delicacy and the intricacy of that stuff from when I see manufacturing videos, I have a hard time thinking that, not that Americans can't do it, but again, it's not going to happen overnight. You know what I mean? There's going to need to be a learning curve. There's going to need to be time for an adjustment. And so my biggest issue with the way this administration has handled these tariffs is knowing that you're going to need a runway. You're going to need a 1 to 2 year at a minimum runway to try to do this. His steep tariffs, all it's done is driven inflation up and raised prices and caused it to where, again, the normal American is once again having problems paying for things. And this is exactly why Trump was elected, to get us out of that. So anyway, I thought that was a really insightful 1-minute clip from that gentleman. I'll try to figure out who that was and see if there's any more from him. Okay, next. All right, let's talk about what's going on again with Jake Fake Tapper and this whole uncovering of, Joe Biden's all of the sudden, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. He had dementia or he had cognitive decline.
Now Jake Tapper has uncovered the truth. Like, it turns out Joe Biden was in cognitive decline. Did you know that?
How did he find out?
Just hardcore shoe leather investigating.
Just working his sources.
Just working his sources, like calling all the people in Washington, digging up like FOIA documents. You kind of can't believe what you're witnessing, because Jake Tapper is pretending to have uncovered a scandal that he himself led the way in the media, or one of the leaders in the media, in covering up.
All right, you know what? As soon as I started playing that, I'm like, oh my God, did I play that before because of Jake Tapper? But no, what I played before with Jake Tapper was him basically calling out Hunter Biden. If you remember a few episodes ago, when Joe Biden announced he had cancer, and then Jake Tapper went on the aggressive, basically going like Full Metal Jacket on Hunter Biden. So now, if you haven't seen, Jake Tapper is like leading the charge, quote unquote, uncovering that President Biden had been in cognitive decline for a while and that none of them noticed. Like, this is so crazy. It's such a Jedi mind trick. Like, they're trying to Jedi mind trick the American people. And I will say, no different than how the Republicans are trying to Jedi mind trick the American people about the Epstein files. So think about it. Let me make this analogy for you. For 4 years, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino were like, give us the Epstein files, give us the Epstein files. Now they're in a position to do that, and it's all stall ball. And so same thing. For 4 years, Jake Tapper, CNN, all of the left-wing media said nothing about Biden's cognitive decline. I mean, anybody with half a brain could see it. The guy was just never there. And then all of a sudden, now, even though they used the debate with Trump in order to kind of get him off the ticket, they still never came out and really said he is in like this tremendous, or was in this tremendous cognitive decline. And so now, again, now they're trying to Jedi mind trick the people, saying that, oh my God, look what we now have uncovered.
To the point where if somebody would go on his show and say, Joe Biden is obviously in cognitive decline, he can't get a sentence out, he would say, how dare you bully kids who stutter?
That's another great point. I remember talking about that. I had never, ever even heard that Biden had a stutter. And then all of a sudden, I forget when it was, but it was at some point last year where, again, he was just cognitively declining, but then they tried to pin it on a stutter. So they tried to pin it on a stutter back then, and now obviously they're admitting the truth.
Like, are you at all ashamed of what you're doing? That's what he told Laura Trump when she was like, yeah, I feel bad for Joe Biden. I wish he could get a sentence out. And he's like, do you ever think about what you're doing to kids who stutter and the kind of world you're creating for them? And she's like, what? Like everyone else, I never even knew Joe Biden had a stutter. I've been watching him for decades. I never saw him stutter before.
By the way, I think I said it, but that was Glenn Greenwald on Tucker Carlson. You know, this Glenn Greenwald guy, he's an excellent, excellent reporter. And then if you might have, I don't know if anybody keeps track this good, but he came under fire over the weekend where I guess somehow maybe a sex tape. Now, he's a gay Jewish guy. Okay, so Glenn Greenwald is a gay Jewish guy who, by the way, goes at Israel and Netanyahu with a vengeance. I mean, he really calls them out big time and has been one of the clearest and, most well articulated. I wanted to say that. Does that make sense? Most well articulated, or the wellest articulated? What the heck am I trying to say? I cannot even believe I just said the wellest articulated. That is like the dumbest thing I think I've ever said on this podcast. Okay, the most articulate. I guess we'll just leave it at that. But anyway, Glenn Greenwald's a stud. This guy's a stud. He actually was the one who broke the Edward Snowden stuff, which, by the way, I'm going to research that as well, because I can't say I know everything there is to know about Edward Snowden. And I think that's something very interesting. I mean, we've talked about Julian Assange a lot, and I give Julian Assange an unbelievable amount of credit for exposing the truth. But I think Edward Snowden did the same, and kind of deserves to be in the GOAT conversation for that. So anyway, I'll try to do some research on that and bring it back. But Glenn Greenwald is amazing. And so he came under attack over the weekend when I guess like a sex tape got stolen and released, and I didn't see it, but who cares, man? If you're a grown adult, gay or straight, whatever you do in the confines of your bedroom, that's your business. I really could care less about any of that stuff, as long as they're not harming children or doing anything. And by the way, not that Glenn harms children, but anyone shouldn't harm children. If they do, gay or straight, I have a problem with that. But otherwise, I don't have a problem with it. Do you, boo? You do you. Seriously, enjoy yourself. And so anyway, it was interesting because the timing of it was very crazy, because Glenn went on Tucker Carlson and they did an amazing 2-hour podcast. I was actually going to play it and narrate on top of it, but man, it's so long. Maybe I'll try to cut up some parts and do that. But right after that, this whole sex tape thing got released. And I will say it really didn't faze people too much. I mean, it fazed the people that want to bring Glenn Greenwald down. But for everybody else, they were just like, who cares? We don't care. Glenn's amazing. He does incredible investigative journalism. So whatever, whatever he does in his bedroom with his partner or his husband, actually, that's their business. All right, next clip. Man, 9/11 is resurfacing like crazy on Instagram and TikTok. But TikTok, as I told you guys last Friday, it gets really censored, which is so weird because, again, I mean, TikTok has nothing to do supposedly with China. Maybe it does, and maybe that's the reason. That's interesting. But on Instagram, there's a lot of 9/11 stuff that is happening. So listen to this clip. This is really excellent. And I think they bring up a lot of incredible things to talk about. And this is in regards to the Pentagon.
How could anyone fly a 60-ton, 125-foot wide, 44-foot tall plane through this obstacle course?
The aircraft, before striking the Pentagon, reportedly executed a 270-degree downward spiral, and yet Hani Hanjour was known as a terrible pilot who could not safely fly even a small plane.
No seats, no luggage, no bodies.
All right, really quick, I had to jump in. When you watch the video on this, and if you remember any of the video footage from the situation at the Pentagon, I mean, it's crazy. There are no seats, no random suitcase, busted wide open, no random clothes laying on the ground, definitely no bodies anywhere, no engine, no wing. I mean, there's like no plane at the Pentagon. You can't even ever see a plane.
Nothing but bricks and limestone.
The official explanation is that the intense heat from the jet fuel vaporized the entire plane. Flight 77 had 2 Rolls-Royce engines made of steel and titanium alloy and weigh 6 tons each.
Really quick. So this theory about the jet fuel vaporizing the entire plane, like it's the Jetsons or something, vaporizing. There's never, ever been a plane crash before this or after this that has ever been vaporized. I mean, think about that. It's not like they used a different form, higher grade jet fuel on those planes during 9/11. It's the same jet fuel that has always been used and that always will be used. It's jet fuel. It's gasoline. And so this whole vaporizing thing, it just doesn't hold water. Forget the Twin Towers for a second. Even forget Building 7, which Richard Gage did an amazing episode on. You know, this Pentagon situation with this whole concept of the plane being vaporized, it's crazy because, again, every other plane crash in the history of time, there's always a giant engine, a wing, a this, a that, a chair, you know, again, a suitcase or whatever. Okay. All right. Listen to the rest of this. Now, in this part, they're going to talk about the bodies again. And even though there were no bodies, listen to what they were able to find.
It is scientifically impossible, but 12 tons of steel and titanium was vaporized by jet fuel.
We're also told that the bodies were able to be identified either by their fingerprints or by the DNA.
Now, that was a little bit of a contradiction because, again, earlier he talked about how there's no bodies anywhere, but then, oh, this was a different guy, actually. Okay, he was saying then afterward, the bodies were identified by their fingerprints or DNA. So think about it. This jet fuel vaporized titanium steel, but somehow fingerprints and DNA remained on the scene in bodies that were also vaporized?
So what kind of fire can vaporize aluminum and tempered steel and yet leave human bodies intact?
From my close-up inspection, there's no evidence of a plane having crashed anywhere near the Pentagon. And as I said, the only pieces left that you can see are small enough that you could pick up in your hand.
Shortly after the strike, government agents picked up debris and carried it off. The entire lawn was covered with dirt and gravel, so that any remaining forensic evidence was literally covered up. The videos from security cameras, which would show what really hit the Pentagon, were immediately confiscated by agents of the FBI, and the Department of Justice has to this day refused to release them. If these videos would prove that the Pentagon was really hit by a 757, most of us would assume the government would release them.
You would assume that, but access was denied to all that paperwork. So again, I mean, the Pentagon situation, and by the way, the theory, the working theory among the theorists out there is that it was a Scud missile that was launched, and basically that Scud missile, you know, pretty much traveled along the ground. And the part of the Pentagon that it slammed into, by the way, remember, that was the part that housed all the documents for the Department of Defense, which the day before, Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense, gave a speech at that exact location of the Pentagon where he said we cannot locate $2.3 trillion of defense budget spending. Hold on, let me see if I can find that clip.
According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
On September 10th, 2001, the day before 9/11, then Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld testified in front of congressmen about $2.3 trillion missing from the Pentagon. In 2015, an Inspector General report came out detailing that number grew from $2.3 trillion to $6.5 trillion missing from the Pentagon.
All right, you know what? Often like I do when it comes to something medical, let's get a second opinion.
The day before 9/11, the day before the attacks, Rumsfeld gave a press conference where he talked about trillions of dollars missing. Then a plane slams into the very part of the building where they were doing the accounting.
According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
They said they couldn't track $2.3 trillion. No, that didn't happen. That did not happen, but it did happen.
All right, thank you, Joe Rogan, for that second opinion. All right, party people, we're at 29 minutes. I'm going to play you this. Oh my God, this is like my new addiction on Instagram. It is the cutest little Chinese boy and his sister. So it's like a young Chinese kid and his sister. They're probably 8, 9, maybe 10 years old, something along those lines. And they are trying to learn English. And the sister is just a beast. Actually, they kind of remind me of my niece and nephew at that age. They really do, because my niece was a beast at that age. She's kind of a beast now, too. I mean, in the best way possible, by the way. Like, I love her. She's such a strong girl. I absolutely love that. And then my nephew is like the sweetest, he's just the sweetest child ever. And so anyway, this boy and girl, this Chinese boy and girl trying to learn English reminds me of them, which is funny. And then they're just hilarious. Now, again, this is another case where watching the video probably is funnier, but I think the audio will provide a good laugh. All right, call a spade a spade. Got some interviews coming this week. I'll try to definitely get 3, maybe 4 out, and that's it. Call your parents as well. Call a spade and call your parents and enjoy this. And by the way, the couple words they're trying to learn is about, student, teacher. Gosh, those are the 3 I remember off the top of my head. So about, student, and teacher.
About. Today. Teacher. Student.还有一个香菲的aft 问夫的 after
That was a great way to end it.
This episode was brought to you by the new book Deep Shallow Dive Into You, available now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in hardcover and paperback. Don't forget to sign up for our new mailing list on our website at deepshallowdive.com.